Let me tell you something most people get wrong. A man doesn't hide his feelings because he has none. He hides them because he's afraid of what they mean. But here's the truth. Even when he says nothing, his actions will start speaking louder than words ever could. And if you pay close enough attention, you'll start seeing the signs he never had the courage to say out loud. Not guesses, not assumptions, real signs you can't ignore anymore. You see, when a man secretly likes you, he doesn't disappear, he shows up. Not always in grand ways, not always in obvious ways, but in consistent, quiet presence. He finds reasons to be around you, even when there's no real need. He creates one. A small conversation, a random message, a simple check-in that's never just nothing. It's intention looking for space. And watch how he listens, not just hearing your words, but remembering them. The little things you mentioned once, the details you forgot you even shared, he didn't forget. Because when a man cares, your words don't pass through him, they stay with him. Now here's where it gets real. He may not say, I like you, but he will protect your feelings like he already does. He'll notice your mood shifts. He'll adjust his tone when you're not okay. He'll try sometimes awkwardly, sometimes quietly to make sure you feel safe around him. And yes, sometimes he'll act a little different around you, a little nervous, a little more careful with what he says. Because when feelings are real, confidence takes a step back and sincerity steps forward. But don't get it twisted. This is not about mixed signals or confusion. Because a man who truly likes you, even silently, will never leave you feeling invisible. His effort might be quiet, but it will never be absent. If you've ever felt this kind of silent love, don't ignore it. Share this with someone who needs to see the truth today. Stay here if you're learning to recognize real feelings. Subscribe because your heart deserves clarity, not confusion. Now listen carefully. The biggest mistake people make is waiting for words while ignoring consistent actions. Words can be delayed. Words can be hidden. But actions always find a way to reveal the truth. So stop asking, why hasn't he said it? And start asking, what has he been showing me all along? Because a man who likes you secretly is still telling you everything you need to know, just not with his mouth. And once you understand that, you stop chasing confirmation and you start recognizing connection. Because real interest doesn't need an announcement. It shows up again and again until you finally see a consistency in small actions as one of the clearest indicators of hidden feelings, because it removes the possibility of coincidence. Anyone can show interest once. Anyone can be kind in a single moment. Anyone can give attention when it's convenient. But when those small actions repeat over time, without being forced, without being asked for, and without any obvious reward, they begin to reveal intention. That's where the truth lives, not in one grand gesture, but in the quiet pattern that keeps showing up when no one is paying attention. A man who secretly likes you may not always express it in bold or obvious ways. He might not openly declare his feelings or make dramatic moves that leave no room for doubt. But what he will do is show up in ways that feel steady. He checks in even when there's no reason to. He notices things about you even when you think no one is paying attention. He creates moments of connection that seem casual on the surface, but happen too often to be random. These actions might look small individually, but together they form a pattern that cannot be ignored. The power of consistency lies in its reliability. It's easy to get caught up in big moments because they feel exciting and memorable, but big moments can be misleading. They can be influenced by emotions, timing, or even temporary attraction. Consistency, on the other hand, requires effort over time. It requires intention. It shows that someone is choosing you again and again, even in the smallest ways. And when someone chooses to invest their time and attention repeatedly, it speaks louder than any single declaration ever could. You might notice that he always finds a reason to start a conversation, even if it's about something simple. You might see that he responds quickly, not out of obligation, but because he genuinely wants to engage. He may remember details you mentioned in passing and bring them up later, showing that he wasn't just listening, he was paying attention. These are not grand gestures, but they are meaningful because they require presence and awareness. Another important aspect of consistency is that it doesn't disappear when circumstances change. Even when he's busy, even when life gets hectic, even when there's no immediate benefit for him, those small actions continue. They might not always be frequent, but they remain steady. That steadiness is what separates genuine interest from temporary attention. Temporary attention fades when it's no longer convenient. Real interest adjusts, but it doesn't vanish. It's also important to understand that consistency creates a sense of emotional safety. When someone shows up in predictable, caring ways, it allows you to feel secure without needing constant reassurance. You don't have to question their presence because it has already been established through repeated behavior. And when feelings are real, even if they are unspoken, that sense of reliability becomes a foundation for something deeper. However, many people overlook these signs because they are waiting for something bigger. They are waiting for a confession, a clear statement, or a dramatic moment that confirms everything. But by focusing only on what is said, they miss what is being shown. They ignore the pattern because it doesn't fit the image they expect. And in doing so, they overlook one of the most honest forms of expression. Consistency in small actions also requires a level of emotional investment that cannot be faked for long. Someone can pretend for a short period, but maintaining consistent behavior over time without genuine feeling becomes exhausting. That's why patterns are so important. They reveal what someone is willing to sustain. And what someone is willing to sustain tells you what truly matters to them. In the end, hidden feelings are rarely completely hidden. They find their way into everyday behavior, into repeated actions, into moments that seem insignificant on their own but powerful when viewed together. And when you begin to notice those patterns, you realize that the truth was never silent. It was just speaking in a quieter language, one that requires attention, patience. And awareness to fully understand attention without a label is one of the most misunderstood forms of interest. Because people often believe that if something is real, it must be clearly defined. They look for titles, for confessions, for direct statements that remove all doubt. But the truth is, feelings don't always arrive with clarity. Sometimes they show up quietly without a name, without an announcement, and without the confidence to be spoken out loud. And in those moments, attention becomes the language that reveals what words are still holding back. When a man secretly likes you, he may not be ready to put a label on what he feels. There could be many reasons for that: fear of rejection, uncertainty about timing, past experiences, or simply not knowing how to express it. But even without a label, his attention doesn't disappear. In fact, it often becomes more focused, more intentional, and more consistent than what you would expect from someone who is just casually present in your life. You start to notice that he prioritizes you in subtle ways. Out of all the people he could give his time to, he keeps choosing you. He engages in conversations that go beyond surface level. He doesn't just respond, he invests. He asks questions, follows up on things you've said, and shows genuine curiosity about your thoughts and experiences. That kind of attention is not random. It requires interest, and more importantly, it requires care. What makes this type of attention powerful is that it exists without obligation. There is no defined relationship forcing him to show up. There is no expectation he has to meet, yet he still chooses to be present. That choice, repeated over time, becomes a reflection of how he truly feels. Because people naturally invest their energy where their interest lies. They don't consistently give attention to what doesn't matter to them. You may also notice that his attention is different from how he interacts with others. There's a level of focus, a certain depth, a subtle shift in how he listens and responds when it comes to you. It's not always obvious, but it's there. He might remember you. Preferences, notice smile changes in your mood, or pick up on things that others overlook. That kind of awareness doesn't come from casual interaction, it comes from emotional investment. Another important aspect is that this attention often carries a sense of intention, even if it's unspoken. He might not say he wants to be closer to you, but his actions suggest it. He creates opportunities to connect, to spend time, to keep the interaction going. And even when there are pauses or gaps, he returns. That return is important because it shows that his attention is not temporary, it's something he keeps coming back to. However, the absence of a label can sometimes create confusion. You might question whether you're overthinking, whether it means something, or whether it's just friendliness. And that uncertainty can make you hesitant to trust what you're experiencing. But instead of focusing only on what hasn't been said, it's important to observe what is consistently being done. Because attention, when it is genuine, leaves a pattern. And patterns are difficult to ignore when you truly look at them. It's also important to recognize that real attention respects your space while still finding its way to you. It doesn't feel forced or overwhelming. It flows naturally, but it remains present. That balance is key because it shows that his interest is not driven by impulse, but by a steady and genuine desire to stay connected. Over time, attention without a label can become more revealing than words themselves. Words can be delayed, avoided, or complicated by fear, but attention is harder to hide. It shows up in choices, in priorities, and in the way someone consistently includes you in their time and energy. In the end, labels are just definitions people use to describe what already exists. But before anything is defined, it is felt. And when someone is giving you consistent, intentional attention without being required to do so, it's not empty. It carries meaning. It reflects interest. And if you pay close enough attention to that attention, you'll realize that sometimes what isn't being said is already being shown in the clearest way possible. Protection and care often appear long before any confession is ever made, because genuine feelings naturally express themselves through responsibility. When a man secretly likes you, he may not have the courage or clarity to put his emotions into words yet, but his instinct to care for you begins to show in ways that are difficult to fake. It's not loud, it's not possessive, and it's not about control. It's about a quiet awareness of your well-being that shows up without being asked. This kind of care doesn't wait for a title. It doesn't require relationship status to exist. It grows from how he feels about you, not from what he has officially claimed. That's why it often appears in small, thoughtful gestures that seem simple on the surface but carry deeper meaning. He notices when you're not okay even, when you try to hide it. Nervousness and subtle effort are often the most honest signs of genuine interest because they come from a place that cannot be easily controlled. When a man secretly likes you, he may try to appear calm, confident, or unaffected, but emotions have a way of revealing themselves in small, unguarded moments. It's not always about what he says, it's about how he behaves when he's around you, especially when he's not fully aware of it. Nervousness doesn't always look dramatic. It can be quiet, almost unnoticeable if you're not paying attention. It might show up in the way he pauses before speaking, as if he's carefully choosing his words. It could be in the slight change in his tone, the way his voice softens or becomes a little uncertain. Sometimes it's in his body language, the way he adjusts himself, avoids eye contact for a moment, or then holds it a little longer than usual. These are not signs of weakness, they are signs that your presence affects him in a way he's trying to manage. When someone is emotionally invested, they become more aware of how they are perceived. They care about saying the right thing, about not making a mistake, about leaving a good impression. That awareness can create a kind of internal pressure, and that pressure often shows up as nervousness. It's not because he lacks confidence in general, it's because he values how you see him. And when someone values your opinion, they naturally become more careful in your presence. Alongside that nervousness, you'll notice effort, subtle, consistent effort that might not be loud, but is definitely intentional. He may try to engage you in conversation, even if it means stepping out of his comfort zone. He might bring up topics he knows you're interested in, or find ways to keep the interaction going a little longer. These efforts are not random. They are small attempts to create connection, to build familiarity, and to stay within your attention without making his feelings too obvious. Sometimes that effort shows up in preparation. He might remember things you've said before and bring them up later, not casually, but with intention. He may try to present himself a certain way around you, more thoughtful, more attentive, more aware. It's not about pretending to be someone else, it's about wanting to show you the best version of himself. And that desire, even when it's subtle, reveals how much he cares about your perception. There's also a kind of inconsistency that can come with nervousness, not in his interest, but in his confidence. One moment he might seem completely comfortable, joking and engaging naturally, and the next moment he might pull back slightly, unsure of how much to reveal. That shift doesn't mean his feelings are unclear. It means he's balancing between wanting to get closer and fearing what that closeness might bring. It's a sign of internal conflict, not lack of interest. What makes nervousness and subtle effort so meaningful is that they are difficult to fake over time. Someone can pretend to be confident, someone can act interested for a short period, but genuine emotional response like nervousness comes from within. It reflects real investment, real care, and real vulnerability. And when that is paired with consistent effort, it becomes even more telling. You might also notice that his effort increases in your presence compared to others. He may be more engaged, more attentive, or more responsive when he's interacting with you. That difference is important because it shows that you hold a unique place in his attention. It's not just about being friendly, it's about being intentionally present in a way that stands out. Over time, these small signs begin to connect. The nervous pauses, the thoughtful responses, the extra effort to engage, they form a pattern that reveals more than words ever could. Because while words can be controlled, these subtle behaviors often slip through without intention. They are the natural result of feeling something that hasn't yet been fully expressed. In the end, nervousness and subtle effort are not things to overlook. They are quiet indicators of something deeper, something real. They show that he is affected by you, that he is trying in his own way, and that his feelings, even if unspoken, are present. And when you learn to recognize these signs, you begin to understand that sometimes the most genuine emotions are not the ones delivered with perfect confidence, but the ones revealed through imperfect human moments of effort and vulnerability. Actions will always speak louder than unspoken words because they require effort, intention, and consistency, three things that cannot be maintained without genuine feeling behind them. Words are easy. Words can be delayed, avoided, or carefully chosen to create a certain impression. But actions demand energy. They reveal priorities. They expose what someone is willing to do, not just what they might feel or think. And when it comes to hidden emotions, actions become the clearest form of truth. When a man secretly likes you, he may struggle to express it verbally. He might hesitate, overthink, or hold back out of fear or uncertainty. But even if his words are silent, his behavior rarely is. The way he shows up, the way he invests his time, the way he responds to you, these are all forms of communication. They may not come with a direct statement, but they carry meaning that is often more reliable than anything he could say. You might notice that he makes time for you even when his schedule is full. Not in a dramatic or attention-seeking way, but in consistent, intentional choices. He finds moments to connect, to check in, to stay present in your life. Time is one of the most valuable things a person has, and where someone chooses to spend it reveals what matters to them. If he is repeatedly choosing to include you in his time, that is not accident, that is intentional. Actions also show up in how he treats you compared to others. There's a difference in his energy, in his attention, in the way he engages. He may go a little further for you, try a little harder, listen a little more closely. These differences may seem small on their own, but when they happen consistently, they become significant. They show that you are not just another person in his life, you are someone he is emotionally invested in. Another powerful aspect of actions is that they create impact. Words can promise care, but actions demonstrate it. Words can suggest interest, but actions prove it. When he supports you, when he remembers what matters to you, when he shows up during moments that are important, those actions build a sense of reliability. They show that his presence is not just occasional, but meaningful. It's also important to understand that actions are harder to fake over time. Someone can say the right things for a while, but maintaining consistent behavior without real feeling becomes exhausting. Eventually, the truth reveals itself through what they do or what they stop doing. That's why patterns matter so much. A single action might be coincidence, but repeated actions form a message. And that message is often more honest than anything spoken. Sometimes people make the mistake of focusing too much on what hasn't been said. They wait for a confession, for clarity in words, for a direct expression of feelings. But in doing so, they overlook what is already being shown. They ignore the consistent effort, the quiet presence, the repeated choices that point in one direction. And that can lead to confusion, not because the signs aren't there, but because they are being measured against the wrong standard. Actions also reveal courage in a different way. Speaking feelings requires bravery, but so does showing them consistently without knowing how they will be received. Every time he chooses to show up, to invest, to care without a guarantee of outcome, he is taking a risk. That risk may not be loud or obvious, but it is real. And it reflects a level of sincerity that goes beyond surface level interaction. Over time, these actions begin to build a clear picture. They show what he values, where his attention goes, and how he chooses to express what he feels. Even if the words never come, the message becomes impossible to ignore, because behavior, when consistent, does not lie. In the end, unspoken words are only part of the story. The rest is written in actions, in the way someone treats you, in the effort they make, and in the consistency they maintain. And when you learn to read those actions, you realize that sometimes the most honest expression of feelings is not what is said out loud, but what is shown again and again without needing to be spoken at all.